to Soulfire Wisdom with Kate Olson. As an evolving spirit and change adventure navigator, it is Kate's mission to empower and guide you on your path and inspire your truest passions. She will encourage you to share your gifts, speak your truth, and ignite your inner wisdom and purpose. She hopes to do so with a little humor and grace, and her own soulfire passion. Kate talks with amazing guests who have embraced the pursuit and are fanning the flames of their own passion, purpose, and soulfire wisdom. Now here's your host, Kate.
Good morning. Welcome to our special broadcast panel discussion, a year of COVID-19 review and a look forward. I decided to do this because a year ago I did another panel. It was a silver linings in adversity, and it was in April, just when we were starting to go into this very long year of COVID. And so, I think it has lasted longer than anyone expected, and I think maybe has affected us and turned out in a lot of ways that are different than we expected. So that's what motivated doing the panel. And so I'm just going to start off right now and have our panel members introduce themselves and tell you why they decided to participate, and we'll just go in order through the group. So can you start, Frank?
Yes, I am here because of a plea bargain. It was jail or join Kate for the year in review. And so I thought, I don't know. I'm Frank King, the mental health comedian. I'm also your TEDx coach. I speak on suicide prevention as a workplace health and safety issue. And I'm getting ready to do my 6th TEDx on mental health in June. Thank you.
Edie?
Hi, I'm Edie Weinstein. I'm a licensed social worker in the Philadelphia area. I'm also a full-time psychotherapist working with individuals, couples, families, kiddos as young as 5, all the way up to seniors. And I'm also a journalist, write for a number of different publications. Like a lot of you, Renaissance person, I do a gazillion different things. I'm also a PR goddess. I help market all different kinds of people and services that I believe in. And I'm also the founder of Hug Mobsters Armed with Love, which I'll talk more about during the panel because that's a big part of what I'm not doing these days, unfortunately. So I'm thrilled to be here. I'm here by invitation. Kate tapped me and said, would you like to be part of this? And how can anybody refuse, Kate? So thank you. I'm honored to be among all of you.
Brett?
I'm Brett Dupree, host of the Joyous Expansion podcast and my other podcast, the Church of Awesome podcast. I'm here mostly because Kate asked, and I thought it would be fun to share my perspective and see what my perspective is based off the questions that I receive. I'm also a Toastmaster, so I'm going to be fighting my urge to do this the entire time because this is how we started clapping at Toastmasters. So if I do this, it's because I'm just used to people celebrating when people say something, talk.
Davina?
Hello, everyone. I'm Davina Lyons. I am a middle school educator and also the founder of Authentic Me Community and Workshops for Women and Authentic Best Life for Teens and Young Adults. And I'm excited to be back on a panel with Kate. I enjoyed the last one, met some wonderful people, and I can tell already I'm going to meet some more wonderful people. So Kate is fabulous at bringing people together. And I'm just excited to also review the year and have this discussion. So glad to be here. Thanks, Kate.
Anna?
Hello, look into my eyes. I'm Dr. Anna Margolina, and I am a hypnotist, and I am on a panel because I love Kate, and I believe that she does an incredible job by bringing people together, and I am curious what we discover today. Okay.
Tina?
Yes, thank you for asking me, Kate. I am a holistic brain health practitioner. I have a background in neuroscience and epidemiology. And I said yes because Kate asked me, and Brett is doing it, and anything Brett is doing, I am. I got to follow. No, actually, Brett and I know each other from Toastmasters.
Okay.
The reason why I decided to join was because I did feel like, because of my background in epidemiology, I did have a different perspective than most people. And I also think about the collective and social psychology as well. And I think that this pandemic is here to teach us some lessons, and I'm hoping I can impart on what I know about the collective and how that could help us. Thank you.
Okay. Nancy?
There we go.
Are you there?
Yeah, yes. My internet's off for some reason. I'm Nancy Andrade. I have a PhD in psychology, and I practice holistic lifestyle coaching now, focused on spirituality mostly. Definitely 2020 has been changes, deep changes that I was forced to do, but actually it turned out to be magical. And so I'm excited to be here and share maybe the spiritual piece of what I have to offer. And of course, Kate, it's wonderful to host this and has amazing questions. I'm really happy to be here too.
Okay, well, I'm really happy to have all of you here. So the first question is, just tell us about your personal experience with COVID. Well, not necessarily COVID, but with this year of the pandemic, and, how you dealt with it, got through it so far. And you can just raise your hand and I'll call on you, and whenever you're ready to speak. Davina?
Sure, I'll start it off. So, as I mentioned, I am a middle school teacher. And so last March, when everything really got serious enough to do the quarantining, and we realized what was going on, it was during spring break. And it was, at that point, it was like no returning, right? No returning to school. And that was when we were sort of, as educators across the country, we were thrust into teaching remote. For many teachers, that was a shocking experience because not everyone is technologically savvy, and nor had they taught curriculum online. And so while I've been doing what I do like this for so long, it wasn't a problem for me at all. And I had the opportunity to help my colleagues. And so that was like the beginning of it. It was exciting. It was exciting, the notion of teaching from home. I didn't understand or realize how it was going to impact our young people. And so it never dawned on me that they wouldn't turn their cameras on, or they didn't want to be in the camera, because in my mind's eye, you're sitting in a classroom live with each other and you do fine. Why wouldn't you be okay with being on a camera? And so there was a lot of learning. There was a lot of learning about environment around the children, maybe some of the stressors, and I know there's some doctors on here that could speak to that, but maybe some of the stressors that the kids were experiencing in the home, and so many other factors that I think the pandemic opened the world up to understanding that we hadn't even thought about. And maybe we thought about it, but we thought about it in a different perspective or context. And so for me, it heightened my sensitivity around young people. It heightened my empathy and compassion, remembering what it was like to be young. And just so this year has been a lot about me growing and learning more about not only youth as an educator, but also about women and what women experience in quarantine. And just the whole notion of empowerment has become so much more of a passion for me, because I think what happened is the pandemic put us in a position where we had to literally look in the mirror and see who we were as individuals, as well as you could clearly see how adversity affected others. And so that's what my journey has been like. And it has been, and I know we're going to talk more about this because, I heard someone say that the pandemic has been a gift wrapped in sandpaper. And I certainly get that. So anyway, yep. That's my perspective. It's really, my focus is about the young people and how they've experienced it and how it's impacted education as a whole.
Okay. So Brett, were you raising your hand? No? Okay. Edie?
I wanted to piggyback on what Davina said because for two reasons. One is that my daughter-in-law is 6th and 7th grade special ed teacher who had to pivot, and I got to witness her working from home. She's back in the classroom now, but I got to see what it was like for her. And then the other is that in my therapy practice, I have a lot of children that I work with. And a couple of reasons why they may not want to be on camera is that it's hard to, if you've been on Zoom calls, and I do telehealth, it's hard to stare at a screen all day long. And they're looking at themselves too. And they may not want to look at themselves. The other thing is that this is a window into our worlds. So the kids may not want you to see what their home environment looks like. That could be part of it as well. There's just, thoughts that came up in my therapy sessions with kiddos. And I think of, how people talk about medical professionals being heroes. Teachers, I can't imagine, teachers, kids, and parents, because I also have parents that are at home with their kids, trying to help them learn. So for me, this has been a little bit of a different exercise. I've been a therapist for 40 years, and I'm used to sitting face to face with clients within arm's reach, within reach of a tissue box if they need it. And I thought, how am I going to do telehealth? It's not going to feel genuine. It's not going to feel from the heart personal, but I'll tell you, they love it. Very few of my clients are in a rush to get back to the office. And they like the idea of not having, you're nodding, yeah. They like the idea of not having to get in their car to come to see me. They like the idea of dressing down for our sessions. And I get to see their homes. Some of them have taken me on tours. Like, this is my cat, this is my dog, this is my baby. I kind of wandered in, just like I saw your cat kind of meandered by. So this is a way of getting to know people better. So that's the professional part of me. The personal part struggled. I live alone. I'm widowed. I have wonderful friends and family. My grandson was born January 21st of 2020. He was the best thing that came out of that year. And I was one of his caregivers for the first, let's say, 2 months of his life. And then lockdown happened, and I did not see this little guy for 11 weeks. So if you can imagine a piece of your heart getting torn out, if any of you are parents or grandparents or have young children in your lives. So we got by with FaceTime, with videos. I made him a video every morning. The kids would take pictures. And then probably around May, around Mother's Day, my son invited me to come over. I had to wear my mask. He actually gave me an N95 mask. He had extras from work. He gave me a mask. I had to, hand sanitizer all the way up my arms, and they made me wear a blanket around me like a bib, and then they let me hold the baby. And then about a week later, he came over with Lauren and with Dean. And at the door, he says, "Here," and he hands me the baby. I said, "No mask, no hand sanitizer." He said, "You're home. You don't go anywhere. You work from home." And so since then, I've been there 4 mornings a week. As somebody whose work is around consent and touch, I was telling bit about hug monsters, which I'll tell you more about. I'm also a cuddle party facilitator. So a lot of my work is about nurturing touch. The only person that gives me nurturing touch besides, my family when I see them is me. So I learned to get by with self-massage, with self-hugs, blankets, pillows, teddy bears, lotion, hugging trees, and then doing virtual hugs. Because the hug monster stuff is like doing free hugs out on the street. And I would since the pandemic, would carry my sign around and say, would you like a virtual hug? And they'd say, what's that? And they said, wrap your arms around yourself. I'm going to wrap my arms around myself. And we're going to do like an energy hug. And then I said, I want you to remember the last hug that you had and just hold on to that, make it a sense memory. And then I want you to fantasize about the very first hug you're going to have when it's safe to do that with somebody you haven't hugged all year. So that's what's gotten me through. And the support of family and friends. And again, my now 14-month-old grandson, who is the consummate hugger and cuddler. So it's beneficial for both of us. So that's my story.
So who's next? Nancy? Nancy?
All right, I was trying to unmute quickly.
Oh.
So I love hearing all the stories for sure, and I can totally agree. I had a center, La Jolla Holistic, La Perla de La Jolla, and in that center I hosted meditations, and I had a yoga instructor come in, and I facilitated, spiritual experiences. We started a speakeasy. I mean, it was just going really, really well. And the building wasn't necessarily the most beautiful building, but I was like, I'll make it work. No worries. It had smell like bathroom. I mean, there were a lot of things that I was just overlooking. And the lease came up in January, and I had to decide, like, do I let go or do I continue for another year? They wouldn't even let me do month to month. So I made a really tough decision, which was like, let go. I had painted wings on the walls, and I had decorated the interior so beautifully. And so to let go of that baby was to like, okay, where do I take this baby to? And I went to another location that I was sharing. And when COVID hit, I was like, wow, this was divinely guided. This was like, I needed to do this. And I have to tell you that since actually I let go of that, I have been the busiest ever. I have had a lot of people reach out from different parts of the world, really, to do work with me in terms of spirituality and reconnecting them. A lot of entrepreneurs, and what that's telling me is that business is as usual. Honestly, as much as I want to say that people suffer because they lost their jobs and a lot of their income, I have actually talked to a lot of people that have said, okay, good, something pushed me out of that miserable existence into something new. Now let's find what that new thing is. And to me, I have seen an explosion of creativity and opportunities, and looking beyond just like this comfort zone, and including for me, my life changed completely. I met someone, and he has kids, and now I have an instant family, and it's just like things just started happening without my control, honestly. And so when I see this or any event, really, I like to see it as like, okay, universe, guide me. Which way? Left? Right? Okay. And that doesn't mean that there's no pain in the process, but suffering is optional. So the experience around, I want to say, it has some pain, but I would say it actually has a lot of growth, a lot of improvement for many, many, many people. So that's my perspective.
Okay, who's next? Anna?
to me, the most important experience was learning how to deal with grief, because I was never good at it. I always was terrified of it, and my way of dealing with it was to block myself. So when all this started and I did my research, and I understood that if I let myself spiral into despair and depression, my immune system will go down. And so I made sure that I created life which was uplifting. I even took my practice outdoors. I started taking my clients in the forest, and they just loved it. Loved to just walk outside and say, so notice the sounds of the forest, notice the colors, and take a deep breath, and with every step, start going deeper and deeper and deeper. So it worked wonderfully. But I still felt this wall that I tried to keep all this grief away of me. Like I felt that there was something dark and heavy outside, and with all my optimism, with all my energy tools, I tried to keep it. And then my dog died, and it all collapsed on me. So I felt like I cannot hold it anymore. And this wave of grief just consumed me. And I decided I will just learn how to deal with it. I will just go into darkness. I will sit with my dog, will sit with this spirit and talk, and really let myself just, with every cell, with every fiber of me, just go into this feeling. What is it? What is it? How come that we are alive and we breathe and we smile and we hug each other, and then just like this, it all can be gone. Just like my dog. 16 years of love, just like this, gone. And I remember this time when all of a sudden I was on the other side. And I could feel myself like a spirit without my body, looking back at life and seeing all the connections, all this, how we don't even know how we touch other people with love, how one word, one hug can touch lives that we don't even know it. And I could see how my dog was teaching me this, all this time, how to love without any conditions. I could be like a total mess. I could feel horrible, but my dog would always love me. I could be at my worst, and my dog would love me. And I started thinking how I can give my clients and everybody this feeling of being loved unconditionally. And I could see how much judgment I had before. I didn't even notice it. My biases, my like, not like. And for myself as well, I started seeing how judgmental I was toward my own self. And I started learning how to love myself. And then I understood that death is nothing. Whatever life we have, this body will be gone. 50 years, 60, 90, 100, 200. this is a physical body, it will be gone. But it's learning to use my life now as I'm carrying this legacy of love, to learn to love without any condition. And it was my learning when I opened myself. I opened this wall, I brought it down, and I opened it myself to life.
Okay, who's next? Tina?
Sure, I'll go. It's a tough act to follow. In fact, I've thought that about everybody's comments so far. I feel that my personal experience might have been quite different than most people. I actually, because I have a background in epidemiology, I admit that there was one part of me that found this whole pandemic absolutely fascinating. I have known about the history of pandemics. I've known that pandemics have been happening for centuries. And I just dove right back into it. I was like, okay, this is really fascinating. And used the history from the past to determine and to get a sense of where our future was going. And so for me, I was able to quickly see that we were probably going to be at this for a while. I'm also very interested in how we're interconnected. And so I thought a lot about, us as an individual society versus a collective society. And in the United States, we are very individualistic. And there is a book called Rule Breakers, Rule Makers, which I highly endorse, which really teaches us about why we become an individualistic society versus a collective society. And, like Asia, much of Asia is collective, right? And so when the pandemic hit for them, they put on masks immediately. Like they think about everybody as a collective in terms of importance of the collective more than they do the individual. So I've been thinking a lot about that, and as well as how do we get people on board with public health measures? Because that was a real struggle at the beginning. And so I got invited to give talks about that. And so that's how that hit me personally, was that I was trying to educate people about the importance of not vaccines at that time, because that was way beforehand, but really, paying attention to public health measures, but also like the history of not vaccines, but well, yes, a little bit about vaccines, but also about the history of epidemics. And when we realized that we've had these for centuries, for as long as recorded histories, as long as we've had a society, we've had pandemics. And they've been a huge scourge, a huge problem in our world, where childhood mortality was like crazy high. And that's why we had so many babies back then. And we've been really privileged in the last 50, maybe 60 years in the United States, because we haven't been hit too badly other than by AIDS, but that hasn't really affected everyone. So we really haven't been hit too badly. Polio was the last epidemic here. And I think that influenced our thinking a lot. So I spent a lot of time thinking about that and blogging about it and speaking about it. And that's how it affected me personally. But as in terms of my personal life, I will have to say that I have had a lot of challenges in my life. I had parents that were somewhat sociopathic and did not realize and put everything together until the last 4 years of why I had struggled so much, why I had so much self-loathing, so many problems with learning and so forth. And everything really came together. But my experience throughout my whole life has been very personal. And because I haven't been able to explain my story around it, because I didn't understand what my parents were, it was very isolating. People would say, oh, your parents would have never done that, or that could have never happened to you, or your reality of the way you learn, that just doesn't seem right. Like I couldn't imagine that, right? That's just not even possible. There's something else wrong with you. You're stupid, or something like that, right? So I felt very alone up until the pandemic hit, when all of a sudden we are in a collective situation where there's massive grief. And I actually, this is the first circumstance where I'm not at the bottom of the barrel in terms of suffering. I'm actually in a privileged position, and this is the first time in my life. But I think the whole idea of thinking about us as a collective was really underscored. I'm an empath, and I see clients on a regular basis. And so I feel their pain when, you know, a mom comes to me and says, you know, I am so exhausted by taking care of my 2-year-old, and I can't do anything else because he's here, and I need to get him in daycare. And so to help provide solutions for that, I'm so grateful that I've been able to do that. But I feel the collective pain that we're all in, and I've done everything I can to help my clients ameliorate that. And I feel grateful that I can be a part of that. But yeah, I can't let go of that collective pain, and I'm very passionate about trying to help us understand the forces that will help us get over this thing, because if we get over the pandemic, then we will get our lives back. And that's the absolutely, I think, most important thing we need to think about. And I'm glad we now have like an administration that is in line with that. So I've been passionate about sharing that message. And that's my personal experience because of my background and interests.
Okay, so we haven't heard from the guys. So who wants to go first between Brett and Frank? Don't rush.
Okay.
Oh.
That's right. Brett.
Yeah. Apparently we're weird guys. We're like, let the ladies go first. You go first.
No, you first.
We're enlightened.
All gone. You guys are the only ones left.
Oh, really? We're the last
Yep.
guys on Earth. Hey, Brett, you know what that means? There's a lot of women that are willing to date me now.
Except for
I
your
wouldn't
married
date you, the
Frank.
last guy on Earth. You know. No, I'm happily married for 33 years. I wouldn't take $1 million for her. I wouldn't give you a nickel for another one, but I wouldn't take $1 million for her. Old joke. It's been an odd over year for me. Mine started long before everybody else's. My weird coronavirus. I was in the Western Pacific. I got on a ship on February 1st in Singapore called the Westerdam. There was another ship in Singapore that morning called the Diamond Princess. Now, the Westerdam, Holland America, we did not allow anyone on the ship who had been on mainland China in the last 2 weeks. So no one on our ship, 2,500 passengers, staff, and crew, ever got sick. The Diamond Princess, however, was ravaged by the coronavirus. They were quarantined off the coast of Japan for a couple of weeks. We did try to land in 5 different countries, and everybody turned us away, including Guam. And I said to the captain of the ship, Guam? That's a U.S. territory. How can they turn us away? But they did. We finally landed, found apparently somebody was willing to take a check in Vietnam. So we landed in Vietnam. We're flown to Phnom Penh, put up in a hotel. Again, never quarantined. And when my contract was up with the cruise line, I was doing comedy on a cruise ship. And when my contract was up, I actually had myself tested on the morning of the 15th at the hotel by the WHO using one of those WHO tests that President Trump, as my mother would say in his infinite wisdom, turned down in January. And there was a CDC representative there from the U.S. And I said, can I go home? He goes, yeah, go. So I flew home and I got to Seattle, and I'm walking down the concourse of the International Customs Immigration Building. And there's a gentleman in a green uniform standing right in my path. And he goes, Frank, we've been waiting on you. So the CDC in Cambodia told him I was coming. I went into the office. I'd answered the health questions, had my temperature taken, got cleared to enter the U.S., made the mistake of speaking to the press. Somebody tipped the press that I was coming back from ground zero in the coronavirus pandemic. And even though I told them that no one on our ship ever got sick and that we were never quarantined, every headline in every publication on the internet, whatever, comedian jumps quarantine. And I was on the front page of the New York Post and the Daily Mail in London and the Independent in London. I was on Lester Holt's show, Entertainment Tonight, Inside Edition, on and on and on. So I became an international pariah on the 17th of February. And somebody called me. You came back to this county to kill everybody. Now I'm a comedian. So I said to him, no, sir. I've got a list, and you just made the VIP section. I had changed my home phone number, deactivate 3 social media accounts, and handle the death threats. So the last 2 weeks of February were sort of a difficult time for myself and my poor wife, who is a cashier in a grocery store. And people would come up to her and go, "Are you married to that guy?" So I was that guy until the pandemic, came into full force and wiped me off Google page one. So I had my 15 minutes of fame. And it was very uncomfortable. The year that followed, my last engagement was on March 13th, osteopathic anesthesiologist in Chicago. Flew home on the 14th and didn't have another engagement live until March 3rd of this year. I got a call from a speakers bureau in February. He said, "Frank, are you willing to fly to Florida, a state with no statewide mask mandate, in the middle of a pandemic to perform live?" And I said, "I'm suicidal. What do I care?" And so I got the booking. And I went and I wore my mask. I got an N95, wore it on the plane, make sure, be very careful. And I came back and I'm still, virus free, had my first shot. And yes, and it appears that live engagements are coming back. I think when Biden announced that all adults will be vaccinated by May 1, all of a sudden, I'm scheduled for a virtual event for a behavioral health organization in Iowa, Spencer, Iowa, in the middle of June. And they sent me an email. "Would you be willing to come and do it live?" Absolutely. So now I have 2 live events in April, 2 virtual. I have 4 live events in May and 2 virtual. So I do believe that the speaking business, which is my business, I speak on suicide prevention, is coming back. And the way we survived was, first, the federal and state unemployment for gig workers, first time in the history of the world. That was very helpful. I got an EIDL loan. And also I've gotten 2 rounds of the PPP, and I'm getting ready to get some more EIDL money because they raised the limit by extending the amount of time from 1 year to 2 years, how long you've lost money. And a friend of mine and my sort of unofficial business manager said, "Look, live events, this is back last spring. I don't think live events are coming back quite some time. There's a long sales cycle. Your TEDx coaching, you need to focus your marketing on TEDx coaching." And I had a handful of TEDx coaching clients. And so I focused my marketing on TEDx coaching, and now I have 24 TEDx coaching clients, and 2 of them have just gotten TEDx's. By the way, both virtual. So far, everything we booked has been virtual, but Seattle TEDx, they were not willing to commit to a location in September because they think we may be meeting live come September. So it's and we had a wildfire. It came within 1.25 miles of our house. I was downtown when, I don't know if you understand or know the level 1, 2, 3 with wildfires, but 1 is get ready, 2 is get set, 3 is get out, don't look back, don't take anything. I'm downtown. We hit level 3. We have 11 rescue kitties. So as everybody else in the neighborhood is driving hellbent for leather out, I'm driving in to rescue the 11 cats. And the wildfire is 1.25 miles away. I just could not live with myself had something happened to the cats, and I thought I might have had a chance to rescue them. I get to the house. I have a whole new respect for the term herding cats. I put 1 in the carrier and 2 would jump out. But I got all 11 in the carriers, and we got out of the neighborhood safely. And 2 weeks later, we were able to return home. And fortunately, thanks to the National Guard, especially trained wildfire fighters that the governor sent here, our neighborhood was spared. But it's been an exciting 12, 13 months. So, but oddly, what was it? Somebody said, was it a silver lining wrapped in sandpaper? And I think for speakers, the real benefit, if there is one, to the pandemic is this. On May 4th, I've got an engagement in Salt Lake City at 6 p.m. I got a call from somebody in South Palm Beach, Florida. Could you do a lunchtime on May 4th in South Palm Beach County, Florida? And I said, I can't get from A to B on a plane. They said, well, what about virtual? What about virtual? Because 2 years ago, if I suggested Zoom, they would have gone, what? What's a Zoom? Now we have become, accustomed to doing things virtually. So for speakers, it has made the world a much smaller place. You can do an engagement in Salt Lake City at 6 p.m. and have been at an engagement at lunchtime in Palm Beach, Florida, the same day. So I think if there's a silver lining, it's that sort of we're not the slaves to the calendar and travel and plane flights and so forth. So it's been a mixed bag.
Okay. So that leaves you, Brett.
Awesome. Well, I should have definitely gone before Frank because my story is not half as interesting or a tenth as interesting. But at least Frank got a lot new material for his suicide prevention. That is a lot to go through. My year has been interesting because when it comes to my normal life, I've been relatively blessed. Yes, I host podcasts, but those generate no income. So my income comes from my full-time job, which I not only kept, I got 3 raises during that time that I did not expect. And since it's in healthcare, I'm fully vaccinated since January. And so it's just been amazingly blessed, but it also has just given me one of the negativities of blessings is that I have plenty of time to think and plenty of time to stay at home and do nothing and recognize the fact that this year has been hard on me, especially when it comes to my thought process and to my beliefs. I became a personal development I was obsessed with it. I mean, I maxed out all my Audible achievements on personal development and growth. And then when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden I went into panic mode. All these coping mechanisms, none of them worked. And I was just obsessively looking at worldometers almost every day to see how many people had died. Not only that, I was able to recognize and see for myself, like almost a veil was lifted to a lot of the negativities in personal development growth, while so many people who I loved and who I looked up to went into QAnon and conspiracy theories and became anti-vaxxers. And just looking at it and noticing how a lot of the things I learned are toxic, and learning how the basis of a lot of them, especially someone like Napoleon Hill, who I loved, turns out he was a laissez-faire libertarian. And if you really look at all this stuff, it makes a lot of sense of where a lot of the aspects of the law of attraction comes from that. And so it's almost been earth-shattering for me, as it caused me to question nearly everything that I was believing in and everything I thought that would help me. So my entire year has really been a reflection of when I'm not panicking, being able to reflection on why I panicked, why all these things I loved turned out to be toxic, and to all these people who I respected just going down this extremely dark path. And so for my entire year has been a combination of panic, embracing my loved ones, of course, because I also got engaged during the year, so it hasn't been completely bad. I mean, there's a lot of great things as well, but it's also when it comes to my personal growth and my personal development of like figuring out what exactly goes wrong. Is this something I really want to stay in? And if I do, what does it look like in the future? And I'm still in the process of figuring that out.
Great. Well, I think learning to question everything is actually maybe a blessing in disguise that you got from that. It's always good to question everything. So some of you have already answered this question, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyway. What was your biggest challenge through the pandemic? And Edie?
My biggest challenge, being such a people person, a social butterfly, was shrinking. What I thought was shrinking my life down considerably. Besides the difficulty with touch, I thought there's 2 things that I do, cuddle party and the free hugs events. What if I can never do them again? And back then, remember that we thought, it'll be a couple weeks, and it'll in the beginning, and maybe you, as Tina's an epidemiologist, knew that it wasn't just going to be a couple weeks. That I thought, a couple months. What if it's a year? What if I can't hug another human being for a year? How will I be able to? And somebody else mentioned being an empath, that when I work with my clients, unfortunately, I sometimes take on their pain. And I work with people that are dealing with serious mental health challenges even before the pandemic. So how will I not take it on, not absorb it when there's no outlet for it, nothing I can do to shake it off. So that was a challenge, a huge challenge for me, is thinking, how the me that I thought I was going to adapt to this now normal. I don't like calling it a new normal, because I don't want to believe that this is how it's going to be forever. Human beings can't exist, or can't thrive. They can exist, but they can't thrive in the current conditions that we find ourselves in. So that was the constant question. And then, everything everybody has said feeds into everything that was going on for me as well, because I thought, all right, I'm not in this alone. I've experienced losses like everybody, but they were my losses. This is our collective loss and grief. And this is our collective growth point. And Brett, what you were talking about with disillusionment, I was amazed at how many people in the holistic field and the New Age realms that got sucked down the rabbit hole of QAnon, and whose political beliefs weren't just political beliefs, they were values. So I can't assume what our listeners' beliefs are, but I don't call what I do political writing. I call it writing about social justice. So it gave me an opportunity to get real with myself, because I was here alone with my own thoughts, as you said, and with my own voices, not psychotic voices, but the automatic negative thoughts that we have. I kept thinking, okay, am I going to be able to do what I'm used to doing online? And again, it's been wonderful. I've done presentations online, I've done interviews online, and I've learned that even though we can't hug right now, we can still love. And that was a big takeaway from everything. So, yeah.
Davina?
Yeah, so there's a few things that were mentioned that I wanted to tag on to, and in talking about the challenges. First of all, Brett, I appreciate your perspective that you shared and your your authentic experience. I think my biggest challenge was just that. It was people that I loved, that I've loved their entire lives, known since they were babies, people that I was just blown away by what I call the coming out of people that I had no idea who they really were. Now, that's not to criticize them for who they are. That's who they are. That's their truth. However, it didn't always align with my truth. And so I think what this did is it put me in a situation where I had to make some decisions about who I wanted to continue to interact with, or who I want, because what I could not allow, as Anna mentioned, is I needed to have that space where I felt safe. My platform with Authentic Me community is about authenticity. It would be hypocritical of me to look at someone and say, no, you shouldn't feel this way or be this way, because if that is their realized truth, then that's their truth. That's their authenticity. And it's not to, but I do have a choice, right, about who and what I will accept and interact with. And so from someone mentioned collective pain, collective healing. Well, I mentioned collective healing. I heard, I think Dr. Tina talked about collective pain. I started out my communities all about community itself, all about the organization, all about tribe. My initial organization was Tribe Authentic Woman. For those, if you see that out there, I just in 21 decided to switch that from Tribe Authentic Woman to Authentic Me. The reason for that is just this. I realized that all too often people are looking outside of themselves for solace. They're looking outside of themselves. And I too am such a self-help person, and, read all the books and did all that. And there was a time when those things were very important and essential to build me up, to get me to a position where my cup was full enough to be able to now overflow and help others, right? But understanding and putting all of that in perspective, that became a challenge during this last year for myself as well. I started to question, like Brett, I started to question so many things and have conversations. And in addition to that, with all of the racial climate stuff, the social injustices, I was also hit with the fact that I'm a Black woman in America. And while I don't typically, put that out there, you can't help when you're in my skin. You cannot help but be, conscious of what's happening. So that was an added layer of trauma. And what I realized is that not only do we as people maybe experience adverse childhood experiences, but we're experiencing adverse climate. We're having current experiences that are just as traumatic, just as tough to deal with, and expected to continue and move forward. And so myself being a founder, being a leader, being an educator, I'm always in front of people. I had to make sure that I was still maintaining my own level of authenticity, that I wasn't stepping up and saying one thing and doing another, and that that I had to walk that line, but privately I was struggling too. And so it helped me though to have women that I work with that I could share that with, that I could. And so my thought around collective pain is that sometimes there's collective healing when you're in the right circle, when you're with the right people. And the task at hand is making sure that you are with the right people and understanding yourself enough to trust your instinct, to trust your inner spirit, your Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, trust it and believe. But first, put yourself first. I mean, really, truly go within. And that's why this year I changed my whole focus to authentic me. It's important for me to look at me and understand who I am so that I'm not thrown off course by other people and what's outside of me. That's a challenge. That's really a challenge because as much as we don't want to admit it, many of us are wired to be people pleasers and wired to try to, be concerned with what's happening around us or what we should or shouldn't do. And in essence, it's really about loving and nurturing yourself. And if more of us were able to do that, I do think as a society, we'd be healthier. Because being led by something or someone that doesn't have it together for themselves is certainly not going to help you, if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely. Yes. Yeah, I think we've all been going through a similar process of, realizing that self-love component and also that you can't really love other people truly and without judgment until you do, love yourself truly and without judgment. So who wants to speak next? Nancy?
So a couple of thoughts, and I love what you just said, because I want to take on that. Something that was really difficult for me was to let go of my attachments, of the way that I thought life should be and the way that I thought my purpose was and how I was going to do my path. That was really hard because I had an idea and I was working towards that. And it seemed like God or the universe, or whatever you believe in, life just said, nope, this is your path. And I resisted. I honestly resisted. I was like, what? I cry and whatever. And that's okay, right? Because that's part of mourning. That's part of the grief, I would say. And so that's my piece. But another piece that I've seen in myself and all of my clients too is self-care. What I've noticed is a lot of my clients were saying, I used to travel whenever I was upset or whatever. I used to go somewhere and do this, or I used to go to dinner. They used going outside in community as a way of coping. And now that they're forced to be indoors, inside, with their thoughts, with the people around them, it's sort of finding new ways of communication and not avoidance, new ways of coping that they never thought of, and new ways of taking care of themselves. And so what I've seen very often is we look outside of ourselves to feel this comfort and this whatever. And yes, when we are depleted, definitely a really warm hug will replenish you, like like the gurus. Um, when you're feeling confused, clarity, talking to someone really helps. I agree with that. But what I'm seeing is a dependent on that to make you feel a certain way instead of a dependent and a self-dependent. Being able to tune into your own wisdom, your own knowledge to take you through and change you. And a lot of couples that I've worked with have like had tremendous issues because of having to be with each other 24/7, no distractions, no ways to avoid it, and really getting to know each other at a deeper level. So I really focus on deep communication. Another piece that I also wanted to talk about briefly is this virtual connection has expanded the mind to think, well, can we really connect? I have done some energy healing on people virtually. So people are like, does that work? I've done reading some people, like even all over the phone, and they're like, you don't need to be in front of me to do that. And I'm like, no, this is how energy works. Energy expands and it's all over. So there is something about this type of connection that is being open. The mind is getting open slowly but surely, and expanded into this new. It's not new; it's old, but it's a different way of consciousness, a different way of seeing how we are all interconnected. So that's my piece. Muted.
Okay, so who's next? Brett?
Sure. The question was the most difficult part again of the
Yeah, the
pandemic.
most challenging.
The most challenging for me is noticing how much my anxieties are still a big part of my life, as I thought I would let a lot of them go. I was able to really see that. And honestly, the most difficult thing that happened for me was throughout my personal development growth and trying to build something from it that generated income. I haven't been very successful at it, but I did become successful at one thing, which is I created a Toastmaster club for spiritual people called the Lightworker Toastmasters. And the most difficult part was having to let that go because the president was basically a Trump Nazi. And having her put that stuff into the club and mentioning all those things. But I was holding on to it because that was my baby. That was something I put so much hard work into. And it was the one thing that I was truly successful at. And I helped so many people, met so many amazing people. And then January 6th happened, and everyone knows what happened on that date. And this person was actually part of it in Washington. And recognizing the fact of the club that I created was one where people can come and talk about anything, and we had no boundaries. I recognize the fact that if I were to try to kick this person out, that wouldn't work. That's not the club I created from the beginning. And recognizing the fact also that that's not something I can be a part of anymore because of my personal beliefs. I am not pro-Nazi. I'm very anti-fascist type of person. But having to look at that and let go of something I put a lot of work into, something that got a lot of praise, because it's really hard to build something like that, a community Toastmaster club from scratch. And to lose that was devastating for me. It was almost like losing, it's probably after losing a living person or an animal. It's probably a little below that of just working something that I worked so hard on. And just to be recognized the fact that sometimes it's better to let things go, even if it is something you really love. And so working through that has been probably the hardest part of it, is just learning what I need to hold on to and what I need to let go. And unfortunately, it was something I worked really hard to build and met so many amazing people, including Dr. Tina and Anna. Well, I knew Anna before that because she's amazing, period.
Tina?
Yeah, I'd like to second that because I did join Lightworkers as well and met Brett that way, and we it was widely praised by Toastmasters because how quickly Brett brought the group together, and I mean our membership just skyrocketed in a very short amount of time, and unfortunately this pandemic just took it all down, and it was very much about the story of our president, unfortunately, that things just really started to get very tense and difficult. And so I really feel your pain on that one, Brett, and felt it for you. So that was really trying. I think for me personally, the hardest thing for me is loneliness, because I'm single, and my life in many ways got more isolated, because either, I had people who were QAnon supporters, and I just or they just didn't believe in the pandemic, like they didn't believe the public health measures were important, or things like that. They just didn't understand. They didn't share my reality in that way. And for this is pretty fundamental, I think, in terms of hanging out with people. So I had a little bit of that in my life, but also just other circumstances where one of my best friends got married, and just met the love of his life and got married, and didn't really have any time for people outside, and decided that that was, he had a new social group and that was more important. And another friend who just got a new job that didn't give him any time off. And so and I'm not a person that necessarily needs a lot of people in my life. So when everything, and then another person that isolated because of her health issues. So, because of all that, it just kind of it meant that I lost those connections, at least in terms of spending time together. I could still connect with them on phone, by phone. But it also meant that I like to do outdoor activities, and I was doing most of my outdoor activities alone. And I did meet a new friend, and that helped a little bit, but everybody in my world is pretty busy. We're all either entrepreneurs or highly educated in academia or something like that. And so, I, like them, don't have tons of time to get together. So that is been a big part of my, the biggest struggle I've had. But that being said, I connect with people all the time on Zoom, and including clients where I'm connecting, I'm hearing about their experiences, and that in itself makes me feel like I'm not alone. But also, I am so eternally grateful that when we had this pandemic, we already had Zoom set up, and we were able, for example, one of the ways I connect is through exercise. I love to take classes and stuff. Well, I could still take classes because people were able to quickly go onto Zoom. And meetups, thank goodness, Meetup changed their policy so that they could be on Zoom, as that things did not have to be offline anymore. They could be online. In fact, they supported that, and I'm so glad that they made that shift as well. And when I think back about pandemics in the past, back in the early part of the century, the loneliness, I feel their loneliness and pain because they did not have even the phone systems that we had. So when you think about that and think about the incredible isolation they had, I just feel eternally grateful that I'm able to talk to people. I may not have the hugs I want, but that seems like nothing in comparison to what they were struggling with. And I have a cat who is very affectionate, so that takes care of a lot of my needs for hugs. She when she comes over here, and there's no problem. I'm surprised she's not here showing you that yet. So she often does that in the middle of a meeting because she likes to be in the center of things. So that has been a personal issue for me. Another one is that I have been, I think I mentioned the QAnon concern. I've had a loss of, and I would say this has happened more. I don't want to bring in politics, but I have to say that I had a lot of loss of faith of the American population, especially when we had a president that was so cruel. And I was just like, where is the compassion in this world? How can we not celebrate? All of a sudden it felt like we were just on this path of that cruelty became the new cool thing. And, people would slam each other. I mean, it did start decades back, but, senses of humor would be about putting each other down, and I'm like, that's even on TV, right? And then it would just get more and more inflammatory, and there would be these, you know, people and talk show hosts which were just like constantly slamming, you know, other groups and so forth. And I got really distressed about this, and I kept talking about, like, you know, the importance of compassion and why are we not embracing compassion. And I was so passionate about it that I got asked to speak as a part of the educational series in Toastmasters and I spoke on let's make compassion cool again. And I think it's really important that if we decide as a country, as a unit, that compassion is the new cool, you know, and brand it if we need to, you know, sell cool sneakers or something, whatever we need to do to make compassion cool, that we can collectively decide that that's important and that's what we value. And I am actually seeing, you know, it's changed a lot. We have a president who is very compassionate. I'm so excited about what they did in Valentine's Day. They put I don't know if you know, Jill Biden put these wonderful hearts that were full of compassion and kindness all over the White House lawn. And it just filled my heart with joy. And then they did an interview and you know, Biden like shared, like, you know, somebody was commenting about the coffee he was drinking and he's like, oh no, I'm so sorry. You haven't had any coffee? Here, let me give you, I haven't touched it, you know? And I was just like, oh my goodness, like that level of compassion was so heartwarming to see. And so I am really grateful that we have leadership that's capable of compassion, not just capable, but demonstrating it. So that was just really a key player for me that brought on a lot of distress. And I'm feeling so much more hope around that. So, you know, thank you to the country who allowed this to happen, because I know we did this together. And it gives me a lot more hope. So yeah, that's what I have to say about my pain and overcoming that pain. And I should also say one more thing about the loneliness is that I did find ways of forming new meetups and find my own tribe around that. And so, and that I'm so grateful for the opportunity to connect online as we are doing right now. So thank you.
Yeah. So everybody seems to be having this same struggle, and I noticed myself having that struggle too about you know, not, you know, becoming aware of how people thought and believed, and it being different from, you know, who and what I thought those people were. Some people that, you know, are, you know, I've loved forever, and family members, and, you know, people that I just couldn't fathom following this line of thinking that some of you have mentioned. And so I've been trying to grapple with that. And I've just recently, you know, become more comfortable with dealing with it. I think last week I went on a little adventure. I went to a wine tasting over on the other side of the mountains where I live, an hour and a half drive away. And I was by myself, and so some people that were there at the wine tasting started talking to me, and it became quickly apparent that they had these very different beliefs that, you know, I'd been so horrified by. And I decided I wasn't going to react to them. I was just going to listen. And I did. And I didn't agree with anything. I just said, oh, and really, and, you know, to everything they said. I didn't, you know, argue with them either. I just acknowledged what they thought. And it was interesting. They started to soften as they talked to me more, even though I didn't say anything to tell them, you know, what I was thinking. And at the end of the conversation, I was so surprised that it was a mother and daughter, and the mother lives in the area and the daughter was visiting from LA, and the mother, gave me her number and said she wanted to get together for lunch. And so I'm thinking that that even though these beliefs might horrify and disgust us, that we have to, acknowledge and accept that these people have them, and maybe that opens the door to some change going on. So who is next? Davina?
So I like that perspective, Kate, when you talk about listening. Listening is really important. And one of the things that I had to make my mind up to do is to listen more and not feel like I need to change someone's perspective. Because I think it's a natural thing to want to engage. And in any time I would try to, like people that I've been friends with, or like I said, or I've known for a long time, love, family's been close, whatever. When this thing hit and I started hearing some of these comments, and it was hard for me not to take it personal. I was tying some of the perspectives align with some prejudices. And I don't care what you say, there's no way to get around it. I know we had that last panel that I was on. We talked a lot about that, right? Well, what I had to first do is separate myself and not take it personal, because then it injures me internally and I don't need that. But the other thing I had to realize is that people's identities are deep, and their identities are where they're coming from. That's the source of why they feel the way they do. And so you're not just wrestling with current perspectives, you're wrestling with deep stuff, how they're raised, what they, have been taught their entire lives, what they've seen, who knows? It was eye-opening for me to have a conversation with someone who mentioned that she had been bullied in school by a person of color. And she didn't say what color, but she just said, that was where it started feeling a certain way for her. And what happens is then that school bullying turned into a perspective about people of color that went on to the workplace from school. And from the workplace, maybe there's a supervisor or a coworker or something. And the next thing you know, and so on and so on. And so there's these levels that are impenetrable. And again, that's her truth. And so I had to, for me to sit there and say, well, that not everybody, that is so cliche. Not everybody, you're generalizing. No, the truth of the matter is there are some unconscious, sub or unconscious things going on that it would take some serious therapy for this person to get beyond. And so understanding that, I'm not going to take it on. I will listen, and I will do my best to be empathetic from that perspective, because I do think it's okay for me to have empathy for you, even if you're a racist. I'm okay, because I feel for you, because I know your childhood, somewhere along the line, someone failed you, let you down, and you are acting out of an identity that's deep, that you really don't understand, or you need help or deliverance from. And so that's a perspective I choose to take. And it has allowed me to be healthy in all surroundings, because I don't wear it. You could call me a name, you could do whatever. I'm like, whatever, that's not me. I'm not worried about it. I know my power. So that has helped me to overcome a lot of challenges, because I'm not going to allow you to change my way of being or impact my life because I know who I am. Again, self-awareness is super important. So that's my response to that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, now I don't know whether you guys are doing the Toastmasters thing or raising your hand. So, Anna?
To me, challenge was the same as for Brett. I was watching people whom I admire, whom I thought was very spiritual, loving, compassionate, and all of a sudden, they was supporting the ideology which was obviously so not in line with love and compassion. And I tried to wrap my mind about it, especially since I didn't grow up in America. I did not have the same racial interactions. Actually, in our country, we did have slaves, but they were the same colors. And so we didn't have this division with color. And to me, it seems so absolutely ridiculous because I did not grow up with this. How come just a level of a pigment in skin can be so divisive? And I started thinking, what if I had different life? What if I had different childhood? What if I grew up with those ideas constantly imprinted into me? Mom and dad and uncle and aunt and brother, sister, what if I had it from everywhere? What if I grew up like this? But I grew up being a child who could not speak. I had a speech impediment and I stuttered. And I could not even say my own name. And I know how it feels to be different. I know how it feels to be bullied. And because of this, I grew up with this deep compassion for all living things. Dogs, cats, spiders, bugs. I won't kill a bug. I cannot kill a bug. I would, if I can, I would step over it. So to me, it was absolutely unbelievable how people can see cruelty and still support it. And it made me to really go deep. And I started thinking, if they don't see it, I can see it because I had different life. But if they don't see it, maybe I had beliefs that are just as outrageous, just as might be even cruel, and I don't see them. And I started really going deeper and deeper, and I discovered lots of beliefs that turn out to be cruel. And one of the beliefs was that I have my right, as I believed, to impose my beliefs on people. That I have a right to tell them, no, you are wrong. because I didn't grow up like them. I didn't walk with those shoes. And me judging them, even if they are cruel, I could be like them. I could have the same beliefs. I could be a bully. And I had a story in school. There was a boy who was just vicious. He would chase me. He would punch me and call her names and just making my life hell. And I would always think, oh, I wish I would just die. I wish, even though I didn't want him to die, but I was like, I just want to erase him from the earth. And then I learned many years afterwards that he was a child who grew up with very abusive parents. He would go home and his dad would beat him up every day. And then he died really young. And I thought, oh, I didn't know it all the time. So I started thinking, if I see a person who is cruel, who is abusive, I start seeing pain. What pain they had to go through to grow up like this. And I feel very lucky, fortunate, privileged. I now love my stuttering. I think I'm so glad that I stuttered because it taught me about bullying. It taught me about compassion. It taught me how it feels to be this person who feels less than everybody else. And because of this, I have this vision. But other people, they just don't. So that was my learning.
Anyone else? Edie?
I live in an area in Pennsylvania, which is one of the states that helped to elect our wonderful new president. I like to think that the area is pretty liberal, because the town near where I live, Doylestown, has all kinds of social justice activities, vigils, rallies, and so on. But I was shocked at how many people had, during the election season, had their huge honking banners and signs and all that were meant to intimidate. I didn't go to any of the activities this past year because I promised my kids that I wouldn't expose them or my grandson to anything. Even with masks on, I didn't go to any of them. So I watched, the Black Lives Matter rallies. I watched the election rallies. A little bit enviously, but I was glad that there were a lot of people there. I did do a Ride with Biden car rally. My kids, were fine with my being in my car by myself, honking the horn. Just a week earlier, there had been a rally for the other guy. I don't even want to say his name anymore, but the other guy, and they had their big pickup trucks with the horns blaring and the signs. And I was joking with one of my friends, saying, I don't know that anybody would be intimidated by a Biden flag or Biden rally, or by that they wouldn't be afraid of that. And I decided I wasn't going to give this situation my fear. I wasn't going to get sucked into all the drama. I didn't always keep my promise. A lot of what I write about, as I mentioned, is about social justice. I wrote an article called something about a white woman grew up in the suburbs has no clue what people of color live with. So I picked the brains of my friends of color who were willing to write about, tell me what it's like to grow up in their skin, in their culture, and whatever. I learned a lot. I also learned a lot about myself. I grew up in a home where we were supposed to not see color, but then I realized that's racist too, because we all are unique. We all are, have our individual cultures and beliefs that we grew up with, or that we've learned since then. I'm a white, cisgender, middle-class Jewish professional woman. So I learned about hatred and bigotry as the granddaughter of Russian Jewish immigrants who fled Russia during the pogrom. So I understood it from that perspective, but I had no clue. I grew up in Willingboro, New Jersey, which was one of the original Levittown communities. Levittown, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York. And I didn't know until very many years later, after I moved out, that the developer, last name was Levitt, was incredibly racist, and the first black family had to sue to be able to buy a house in the community. By the time I left, it was probably, I would say, fairly mixed community, and now it's mostly people of color who live there. And it's been, I haven't lived there since 1977, something like that. So I learned from other people. I don't pretend to be able to speak for anybody but myself, but I understand, after all, each one of us thinks we have the answer. We have it all sewn up, and these poor, uninformed supporters of the other guy, if only they knew. So I've had to curb my own anger, my own bullying, and it's hard for me to understand. But I know that if I lived their lives, I might feel exactly the way that they do. In my community, there are at least a half a dozen that I've heard that were actually at the insurrection on January 6th. Some of them are business people, and I will no longer do business with them. So I think, I vote, and I don't want to call it cancel culture, but I vote with my dollars. I vote with my words, with my writing. And I like to think that I'm a safe place for people to talk about stuff, but I still hold people with those beliefs at arm's length. So my big stretch is to be able to embrace them while they still have beliefs that are totally appalling to me. So that's my growth area. So I'm inspired by everything everybody's saying here about that.
Okay, well, we have a comment from one of our Facebook viewers who was actually on our last panel, Bettina Carey. She said years ago she joined a women of color group where she heard it said, white is a color too. We are all people of color when you look beyond the pigment of our skin. So that's absolutely true. So does anyone else want to comment on the challenge, their biggest challenge? Frank?
Yes, a number of challenges. One was that the last recession, I made the mistake of trying to, when my speaking business dropped off 80% practically overnight, we filed bankruptcy. That's when I learned what the barrel of my gun tasted like. What I did was try to find a lot of side hustles to make up the deficit in my speaking income. And so this time when the recession or the economy tanked, inside my head, I was thinking, you need to auctioneer, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I realized that last time was a mistake, that better to go deep than wide, dive deeper in the niche that I'm in and put all my energy there. But it was almost irresistible. People going, you could do this and you could do that, make a little extra money. And so, but I was able to focus and go deeper rather than wide. Number two, it's all I can do at the grocery store not to pimp slap somebody who is not wearing the mask over their nose. I just want to reach out and hit them in the throat and say, that's what it feels like when you have COVID, you can't breathe. But I so far resisted, although I have a t-shirt that says in big bold letters with a graphic on there, the mask goes over the nose. I just don't understand. The technology is not that complicated. I think it's, as my wife would say, malicious compliance. They're doing it, but they're not doing it very well. And every now and then somebody, I got a photograph from the front of a guy with the mask not on his nose. He turns around, his red hat, and on the back of his red hat, it says in big bold letters, MAGA. And I guess especially male Republicans are refusing the vaccine. I have mixed feelings about that, but I won't share them with you. That's not a pleasant thought. And the last thing is I kept my own counsel for 4 years of the previous president. I didn't engage on social media about him. I did, however, unfollow, unfriend, and block an amazing number of people. I just decided, unless we were good friends in real life, and then I would just quietly unfollow. But I lost friends. And what I don't understand is, I understand why he was, people voted for him the first time. He was a businessman and a deal maker, drained the swamp. Okay, I get that. 4 years later, and several 100,000 people died needlessly because of the inadequate reaction to the pandemic. I don't understand. I understand why the booger-eating morons vote for him. I don't understand why otherwise intelligent people, knowing him after 4 years and what he had done or not done, still support him. I maybe it's just the kind of media they consume. I was told one time by someone in the media, people don't tune in to a television station or radio station to have their worldview challenged. They do it to have their worldview reinforced. And I know that because I take MSNBC almost intravenously. I would marry Rachel Maddow, even though she has another sexual preference.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's hot and brilliant. But anyway, and what worries me is 73 million people, knowing what we know now about, 45 or whatever, voted. And I think it may be the end of the republic. Because I think if he had been a better politician, if he had actually done something to ease the pandemic, even just a few things, he might have. There's only 35, 40,000 votes between several states that got Biden elected. And had he had even an adequate response to the pandemic, I think he might be president at this moment. So I'm hoping we can do so much in 2 years for so many people that when the election rolls around again, they'll think twice. Compare and contrast. Are you better off now than you were then? So that's been my struggle. And to keep, as a comedian, I'm paid for my opinion, and it's very hard for me to not say something. But I've like I said, I didn't and then I had one post on the morning after the election, and they came after me. And I said, look, I've sat through 4 years of libs and snowflake and libtard, which is a lovely combination of liberal and retard. And I said, I've had enough. And that's when I excommunicated another half dozen friends. I'm sorry I've lost friendships, but I just can't. I can't be friends with you if it's after 450,000 people have died, many of them, hundreds of thousands, needlessly. So anyway, that's been my struggle, and it was like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. And I literally, when Biden gave his first speech, I literally wept at the compassion and the intelligence and the experience and I just thought, thank God. Anyway, that's been my struggle.
Okay. We had a question we were going to deal with on silver linings, but I think most of you have given some of those in your responses about the challenges or how you dealt with your year. And I want to be sure that we talk about the two final questions. one being, what is your outlook for the future? So unless anybody has a big objection, I'm going to skip the silver lining question and go right to the what is your outlook for the future question. So anybody have a big objection to that? Frank?
No objection. No, I was raising my hand to give you my outlook.
Okay. So, yeah, do you want to start with that then? What is your outlook for the future?
Yes, and since we ended on negative, my last comment was on a negative note. I believe Jamie Dimon, the gentleman who's head of J.P. Morgan Chase, said he believes that the next several years the economy is going to come roaring back, and I believe that. I think, and speaking, I believe we'll have a renaissance because 25 or 30% of the professional speakers supposedly pre-COVID have retired or quit or are doing something else, and I believe there'll be quite a bit of pent-up demand. And so I believe for those of us who remained in speaking, it will be several very good years as people have I have a feeling people need to get back together again in large numbers at a conference in an exhibit hall and network, face to face. I just believe, the next 2 years will be, like I said, like somebody said, like the Roaring '20s. Although that's not a great analogy because at the end of the Roaring '20s. There was the Depression, so let's hope, hopefully it won't be a repeat of that. But I believe the next several years will be, good for business, good for speakers, good for us all.
Okay, who else? Davina?
Along the lines of what Frank is saying, I think that people are going to become much more innovative. Innovation, I think, is heightened because once put in a pressure, you figure out how to overcome it. And I think a lot of people have done that. I believe that there's also been a heightened sense of self-awareness and self-esteem because, again, for those people who have been put in situations that they really didn't think prior to the pandemic that they would be able to overcome, they've not only overcome it, but they've grown from it. So for every negative, there's a positive. And I do believe that there's a lot of positives in terms of forward thinkingness, being more self-confident, feeling more worthy and able for those who survived this situation, who didn't succumb to it. And that is going to be good for our future. I tell the kids in the classroom all the time, you are now a part of history and will forever have I had to walk 80 million miles to school story for your kids. Because that's the story that we heard from ours, So now they have their story and they can talk about the pandemic and they can talk about what it was like to have to do school at home and to not graduate, to not have a ceremony and all those things. So I want to just say, I want to leave for the listeners, cast that future vision for positivity. It's all about what we collectively believe now. The outlook is determined by our thoughts and our actions. And so we really need to be thinking along those positive lines, like Frank said. Those projections that are put out there about the economy and all those things, the more we echo them collectively, the more we'll see it happen. We are the deciding factor. What we say, how we believe, what we feel. So we have to keep it pushing positive, as I say. Keep it pushing positive, and we will realize those outcomes. That's what I believe.
Yes, definitely. Who's next?
I'd like to say something. Thank you, Davina, for that. I wanted to follow up with what you said because I kept saying yes, yes, yes. And I want to underscore a couple things you said, because one thing that I like to tell clients about is that when we have adversity, we can experience PTSD, right? And for those who experience PTSD and don't have healthy ways of dealing with it, it can do them under, right? It can have significant damage in their lives. And yet, those who are finding effective ways of addressing the trauma can get to the stage that I like to call post-traumatic growth. And that would probably apply to everybody on this panel, where we have been through our pain and where we have found ways of handling it in a way that we can now help and support others. That's what post-traumatic growth can give you. And I think that for those people who either don't have the resources or are not open to maybe methods that are effective, that can get in your way of not being able to rise above this. So I like what you said about innovation as well, because one thing, I'm an energy practitioner, I'm a holistic brain health practitioner. I do something that nobody understands what it's about, but it's at essence, it's energy medicine. And that sounds very woo-woo, but I will say that my business has doubled. It really has accelerated because I was really ready for everything. From day one, I was already seeing people remotely. And so that it was very easy for me to transition, but also people are starting to realize, hey, the old traditional Western medicine story, isn't all where all the answers are. And they're starting to realize that there's more amazingness to be found in energy medicine. And in fact, as an academic, I can tell you that the research in energy medicine is skyrocketing. Like back in 2013, we had 613 peer-reviewed articles published. That was 2013. And that's when it was in its baby phase. So I don't know how many thousands of articles. I don't know if I think we've lost count. But in terms of it really is getting recognized. And I'm even hearing some doctors understand it or even accept it now. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So I just wrote a letter to a doctor on behalf of a client. And I told her about this intuitive find I had. And I said, I know how crazy this sounds. This is a once in a million diagnosis, but this is what I'm getting. And I'm asking you, and I do energy medicine. I told her about these papers and how it's growing. And believe it or not, she's taking me seriously and having this client really get this, the following up and getting this diagnosis. And I'm like, yes, huge win, right? So I think that open-mindedness to knowing that there are possibilities that, especially in energy medicine, I can't say enough about, where the miracles start to happen, because so much happens on a quantum level. And if you look at quantum physics, everything sounds crazily magical. So that open-mindedness will help us get out. And one thing I want to say is that I think that's going to, if the government is willing to be more open-minded about solutions to addressing the pandemic, let's start talking about nutrition, for example. Vaccines are, they're great. I can't say that they are not effective, because they are effective. And I do think that should be part of our public health policy, but we have vaccine deniers. So what other messages can we get people on board with? Maybe if we start talking about nutrition, like zinc, for example, or vitamin D3, which are great things to have in your, to be taking regularly during a pandemic. If we start talking about those other things and started embracing more of alternatives where Americans are getting more on board, maybe the government might have more trust around, to the people, especially in the alternative medicine community, the holistic healers who are not on board with the vaccine idea, right? So in terms of my outlook, I'm sort of cautiously optimistic. I think the more that we open our minds, the better. And I do think that that's what one of the key lessons this pandemic is here to teach us, is to start to think differently about how we've been living our lives, because we've been very capitalistic and very individualistic. And the pandemic is basically saying, hey, you know what? We're all tied together, right? If I get sick, I can make a lot of other people sick. And especially if I'm not being socially responsible about it, right? If I'm not wearing a mask, that can have huge effects. If I go sing in a choir, for example, right? But it also reminds us how interconnected we are. And I was just listening to Hidden Brain last night, and there's a great example of this, about how if you pass on goodness, if you pass on something that is kind, you can that can really propagate. And I'll tell you, here's an example that they gave, was that somebody decided, they went to a line like Starbucks or something. It wasn't, I don't know what store it was, but one of those things where they're like, I'm going to buy coffee for the car behind me. Do you know how many times it propagated? I can't tell you how many times. It propagated 100 and 60 times. That is how much, that is how infectious being kind and can be. And I just think that like, if we keep that in mind about like how if we are good to people, that can spread just as effectively as if we are unkind and we are cruel. And so what we do matters so much. And if we understand this core message, we can get over this thing. But we have to start realizing we are not alone. We are a collective, and what everybody does matters, and we are in this together. So that is, I think, just a really important lesson of the pandemic. I want to just finish and say one more thing about gratefulness, because this episode was amazing. Unfortunately, I can't remember the title of it, but one thing it said was that if you practice gratefulness, they were doing all kinds of studies on gratefulness, and they found that it helps you with your habits. For example, get over bad habits. It helps you reinforce good habits. I mean, the number of things, it helps you be kinder. There were so many benefits to gratefulness that it basically makes you a better person on just about every level, which is pretty amazing. So that can be a strategy. And so I'm just underscoring what you said, Davina, because you pretty much said the same thing. And I just wanted to underscore that the research really backs that up, that gratefulness and putting out the positives can have a long-lasting effect that just that go out far beyond you. And if you think in terms of the quantum way, life, there's magical components to life, that your reality will change when you start to vibrate in those vibrations of positivity. And it's not Newtonian physics. This is quantum physics, and it does feel like magic. And that's the way things are. That's the way things happen. It's the law of quantum physics, which is true. I've proven that in myself and in my own work, even though I used to roll my eyes at it 10 years ago. So thank you.
Yes. And rather than trying to explain all of the concepts, which are hard to grasp for people who don't, who aren't into that, just putting it out there, I have seen that it is, it's catching on in our society. When I went to get my vaccination, for my second vaccination, and I went to the same place for both of them, the woman asked me what my experience with the first one had been. And I told her, what I had experienced. And she said, "Oh, that sounds pretty typical." And then she said, "That'll probably be your experience now, or maybe nothing at all." And I said to her, "Oh, I'm using a little NLP there." And she kind of looked at me, kind of surprised and like she didn't have a clue to what I was talking about. And she didn't, but she understood the concept of putting a positive in the person's mind rather than, reinforcing all of the stories that we hear about the negative symptoms that you might have. So, that the ideas behind a lot of that energy psychology or NLP are, people are using them even when they don't know it. So, anybody else? Edie?
What's really cool is that it feels like we're sharing each other's brains, like we're getting, tagging on to something that, I think that, or I believe that. I call myself an optimistic, OPTI-MYSTIC, and that name came to me either in a dream or in a meditation, and the whole thought was, I'm not just an optimist, I'm an optimistic who sees the world through the eyes of possibility. So I use that with my clients. I use it in my own life. And when the virus became the idea that it could kill people, I said, okay, my body is not a hospitable place for the virus. It has no role in my life. in my own personal life. And I've stayed healthy. I do believe in science and medicine. I'm also a heart attack survivor, and I have asthma, so I'm in that high risk group, and I'm 62. So I said, all right, I'm going to increase my vitamin D3, as you were talking about. I'm going to do things that boost my immune system. My living room is now my gym. I have a recumbent bike right here. I have a little mini trampoline rebounder over there. I got my weights and my yoga mat here. So every day in between clients, 10 or 15 minutes, quick workout. And then at the end of the day, like a half an hour or more workout. I get outside when I can. I stay in touch with people out there in the outer world. And I've learned to get in touch with me in the inner world. And when you were talking about how, energy medicine, in psychology, they talk about the idea of magical thinking and ideas of reference. And whenever I would hear that, I would like, I said, thoughts are things, and it's not just law of attraction stuff, but what we focus on, we tend to bring into our lives. So I've decided that this whole experience is going to bring about a positive change in the world. Right now, it's scary for a lot of people. I'm great. You talked about gratitude. I am tremendously grateful that I have a job. And in fact, the job that I have now, I was doing as a consultant for 4 years, and then they offered me full-time salary and benefits. And that just, that kicked in September. So being a therapist, there's job security there. Because people, unfortunately now, because of what's going on in the world, need good therapists, need good support people. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that, with very few exceptions, everybody in my family and friend circle have stayed healthy. I have a nephew and his girlfriend out in California that were sick for a while, but they're healthy now. I've had other friends that have recovered. I've had clients that either currently have COVID or did, and they're doing better. I've known, I think, one person personally that's died. So I keep focusing on the good stuff, not to the denial of the scary stuff, but the more I focused on that, and and I watch CNN and MSNBC too, partly so I can be in an echo chamber. I can't bring myself to watch Fox News. I feel like I need to take a shower afterwards. I don't want to hear, yeah, you too, yeah, absolutely. So that's part of what feeds me, is it was hearing that there's hope, hearing that there's justice, hearing that there's something good on the horizon. And you're right, I don't know who said this, but we are all part of that collective recreation of the world. I call it the before times, and I don't know what to call. I don't want to call it the after times, but on the other side of this, I know that we are all going to be better people. If we're getting anything from this, it's that there's an infinite capacity to love, infinite capacity to heal and to repair the world. And in Judaism is the concept of tikkun olam, the repair of the world. So I think we are all of us here on that path, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners are too.
So anyone else want to comment, Anna?
I've been thinking how in the past it was so easy to avoid, how it was easy to get busy. And when people had any uncomfortable emotions, it would just so easy to go out, to see a movie, to get together with friends, or to go and eat out. And if you have any difficulties at home, it's so easy to just escape. So now, when people had to face, hey, I have a body, and for a long time I've been using the body as a receptacle for all the painful emotions and stuffing them in the body and neglecting it, because all emotions are in the body. We feel them in the body as restriction of breathing, or as pain, there's tension, and it's so easy to go into this distraction mode. So now when people started thinking about, oh, I need a body to be strong. I need a body which will be able, if I get sick, that I can get through it. So I see that in the future, people will become more integrated, living not just from up here, but going deeper into the body, started really attending to the hearts, to sensations in the skin, to sensation in the belly, to sensation in the bones, because we have this magical instrument which can feel the energy. And I see clients awakening to intuition when they didn't even know they had this gift. But now as they started cleaning their body, as they started learning to love the body, learning to go from thinking into the body, they started awakening to the sense that we get from our physical body and becoming more present, more connected. So I see in the future that's huge awakening.
Yes. So Frank?
I just want to say that Anna has the most amazing dialect. I could listen to her all day. Just I'm fascinated. I took voiceover for 5 years, and I'm just fascinated by your voice, Anna. It is, and your diction and your pronunciation is amazing. So, well done.
So who else? One more person before we go to the last question. Nancy?
So, the way that I see the future go is people valuing more connection, valuing nature a lot more, and valuing health. We took for granted a lot of that. And another piece is also um, resourcefulness, how people have become so resourceful, and they're now seeing opportunities in the midst of all of that. So I think it's a very positive outcome of all this.
Yeah, they have.
And guys, I have to
figure out how
apologize. I've
get
got
rid of
a noon Zoom, so I'll have to leave you. It's been a pleasure.
Okay,
Thank
before
you
you
for-
go, Frank,
Yes, ma'am.
before you go, the last question was, how can people get in touch with you?
Oh, I'm in the witness relocation program. There is no way. No, I have a website, thementalhealthcomedian.com, thementalhealthcomedian.com.
Okay, thank you for being here.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
I also have to go. I have a 11 Zoom call as well.
You want to let people know how to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can either find me on social media, Dr. Nancy de Andrade, or you can actually send me a text, 619-304-3782 to receive some inspirational texts from me free of charge. So thank you. Thank you for having me, Kate.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
And I also am wrapping up a summit. I have to leave as well. So you may reach me, DavinaLyons.com. And also, well, go to DavinaLyons.com. That's the best way to reach me. And from there, I will definitely love to connect with anyone. Okay. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure meeting you all.
And I can be reached at www.opti-mystical, mystical.com. That's my website. And I'm on Facebook as Edie Weinstein, EDIEWEINSTEIN.
Okay, for those that are remaining, the last question was actually one final thought and then give your contact information. So Who would like to go on that?
I'll go next. One final thought, and it's almost my outlook on the future, is that we are at choice. This pandemic has been a spotlight on all the problems in this world. And the one final thought is, just like us as a collective, do we go forward and start helping each other and change the way we function to a way where we stop this income inequality and actually recognize the fact that not only is it cheaper, it's morally better and everything of putting people in houses, for instance. Or we can continue to go on the path that we are and destroy our living conditions and destroy this planet and create some Mad Max dystopia. But that's also in our individual lives. We can take this experience and become bitter and angry and darn all the people who are above us, or we can use this to become better and to take us to another level of our personal consciousness, treat more people with kindness, treat more people with love, and ourselves with love, determining the fact that you don't have to be go and successful all the time, that sometimes you're going to be knocked on your butt, and just to truly accept who you are at that time and always just strive to love yourself. And so basically you make that choice, and if the choice is too hard, recognize the fact that you can make that choice in the future, and you don't have to be beholden to your past choices. You can always choose to be better, even if you chose to be worse yesterday. You can find me at joyousexpansion.com. Pod.joyousexpansion.com is where you find my podcast, Joyous Expansion Podcast, where I have conversations with people about the struggles in their lives and on how they're able to go past that. And thank you very much for having me on this panel. It's been fun.
Okay, thank you, Brett. So, Tina?
Yes, I'm actually the perfect person to follow Brett on that, because my concluding statements were pretty similar. I'm just going to summarize it in just a couple of words, and that is that I think that if we learn that we are all connected, and we keep that in mind, and we keep that in top of mind, that what we do ripples forward, and it can ripple forward in positive ways, or it can ripple forward in negative ways. And if we just keep that in mind and remember how important it is that we're connected, that I think that will help us get through. And the pathway to doing that is through compassion. And it's not just compassion for each other, but it's compassion for ourselves. So we are connected, and the pathway to helping us get through this pandemic and so many of our other social ills, my goodness, I think maybe all of them, is to remember compassion, not only towards ourselves, but towards others, and the importance of that. And once we can give that to ourselves and to others, this world will be a better place. So if you need to work with a healer on that, I can help you do that. I'm a holistic brain health practitioner. You can find me at tryholisticbrainhealth.com. I'm also on Facebook under that same name, and have some videos on YouTube as well, but that's probably the best way to connect with me. Thank you for having me on this panel, and I've enjoyed meeting everybody else on the panel. It's been an amazing discussion, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anna?
Okay. What I learned that when we go into fear, when we go into anger, we disconnect. We start judging, and when we judge, we don't think. It's so easy to judge, to just say, I know, and then you just don't think. When we shift into more receptive state, and to me, it's love. When I learn to be like a dog, like the sun shines light, and the sun does not care who receives it. and whether they are good people or not. But it's by shining the light and shining the light and just keep, instead of avoiding all this internal discomfort, instead of suppressing and distracting, I learned to look at it as an opportunity to learn more. And if we start looking at everything like this, at every discomfort, every failure, every time when we say, I'm so disappointed, it didn't go like I expected, relaxing, sitting back and seeing it as, oh, what I can learn from it, things start change. So if you are interested to learn more, I have very easy to remember, Margolina.com. So reach out and
Thank you.
yeah, let's connect.
So, Edie, you gave your contact info. Did you have one last thought you want to end this with?
Yeah, absolutely. When the pandemic first began and we went into lockdown, I thought I just want to sleep my way through the whole thing. And like when family go wake up or Sleeping Beauty, whatever, wake up when it's all over. And then I thought, no, I don't want to do that. I still want to live each day to the fullest. I teach people how to live rich, full, juicy lives. So if I'm going to be teaching it, I damn sure better be living it. So even though some days were painful, even though I was worried about my family, my friends, the world, watching in horror on January 6th, nail biter election, all of that, I said, this is my life right now. It's within these four walls. And no matter what else is going on in the world, I've got to take care of it in here. I also want to remind people that kindness costs nothing. Generosity costs nothing. Be generous with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Because I've learned that love without limits begins with self-love. You can't give from an empty cup. So you can still love other people, but it doesn't ring true unless you love the person in the mirror as well. So I invite people to do that. So it's been a tremendous joy. And I feel like I have a whole bunch of new friends. So I'm glad that we're all called there. And the other thing is there are no accidents. I call them cosmic coincidences. It is no accident that we were all called to be together in this moment. All of those listening, all of those who will be listening afterwards, and all of us here on the panel, meant to be. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you all for being here. Thank the listeners for listening today. The regular show is on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific time and Mountain Standard Time. And next Tuesday's show is going to be Magic Through Music. I'm going to be interviewing Emily Lewis, who is a singer-songwriter. And so tune in to hear both about her journey and her creative process. So I'm just going to say bye for now. We went a little over time, and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Soul Fire Wisdom with Kate Olson. We hope you enjoyed the show. If we made you laugh, brightened your day, or sparked a new thought, we have succeeded in our mission. Join us next time when we'll share more secrets and truths and all the magic of transformation that is the journey to Soul Fire Wisdom. Always remember, be fierce in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.